off. Stop. Take time out. Count to 10. Get hold of yourself before you take hold of your child. Write Prevent Child Abuse, Box 2866, Chicago.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
Live from Washington, Crossfire. On the left, I'm Braden. On the right, Robert Novak. In the Crossfire, former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. No Thanksgiving holiday break from the Iranian arms scandal. The Justice Department is reported to be investigating whether anybody profited personally from the transaction. The ousted National Security aide, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, was denied admission to his White House office after reports that he shredded documents there. And White House Chief of Staff Donald Regan denies reports he had been briefed in full on the whole arms deal. Those reports build the feeling in Washington that Regan may not be long for his jobs. But will throwing Don Regan overboard insulate Ronald Reagan from further scandal, or is the president himself in danger? Tom?
Dr. Brzezinski, let me give you two quotations from Donald Regan. The first is about a month old. I'm up to my elbows in foreign policy. I'm one of the few who know the full story about the operations. I attend every presidential daily intelligence briefing and am regularly briefed by the NSC. That's a month old. This is yesterday, Donald Regan. I didn't know anything about what was happening. You understand the NSC does not report to the Chief of Staff. What does that suggest to you?
Well, it suggests to me what it suggests to everyone else, I think. I suppose he was describing the situation somewhat more accurately a month ago.
You think he was describing it more accurately a month ago. All right, now, the second question. If Donald Regan was describing the situation more accurately a month ago, do you suppose it's conceivable that the president wasn't briefed by his chief of staff on what the chief of staff already knew?
It's conceivable. Yes, it is. You know, there are two aspects of this. First of all, some presidents tend to be very deeply engaged in detail. Some do not. And incidentally, it's not a criticism. It's a different style of governing. President Reagan clearly does not get himself involved very much in detail. So it's conceivable because of that. Secondly, there are cases when the president's principal assistants deliberately create a situation of genuine deniability for the president. That is to say, they undertake certain courses of action on his behalf which are consistent with his policy, but the details of which would be awkward for the president to know.
What if those details involve knowledge that you are breaking the law in order to further the policy?
Well, obviously, those who break the law would be culpable and would be highly inappropriate.
So you
keep
the fact that you're breaking the law and that the administration is breaking the law from the president?
Wait, but we don't know that any law has been broken.
And I didn't say that any law was broken, and I wouldn't have, for example, thought of a situation in which one would deliberately break the law and keep the fact from the president. But there may be situations in which the details of execution of a policy are awkward or potentially embarrassing, and therefore you protect the president by not telling him those details.
Dr. Brzezinski, from what you can see from the outside looking in, do you think that Donald Regan is long for this world in that job, or should be?
Well, you know, it's very hard for me really to judge. I'm not a prophet, but he does seem to me to be beleaguered. I'd rather put it differently. What I really hate to see is a president entangled in a disintegrative process, the debilitating process of things being dragged out week after week, contradictions such as the quote that Tom shared with us. All of that is destructive. And therefore, I would like to see the president, and this is where his leadership is really at stake, I'd like him to have a clean sweep. I think the president would be much better off if he made 3 or 4 key changes all at once. That would then focus public attention on the nature of the new team, and that would then, I think, generate a new sense of direction.
Where are those changes? What first, as Chief of Staff, Donald Regan?
Well, presumably, if there are grounds for believing that he in some fashion may be embarrassed by subsequent disclosures, it would be much better to cut one's losses right now.
What about the CIA director, Bill Casey?
Well, I don't know if he is involved. I want to...
Well, he clearly did. Let me just stop at Casey for a minute. As Bob said, Casey clearly did not tell the Senate Intelligence Committees, which he is supposed to do, about this covert operation.
If he was told by the president not to do so, he would have been in a very awkward position then to tell them.
Well,
I don't want to speculate about individuals.
Do you put loyalty over the law always?
It's not a question of the law. Sometimes you may defer disclosure. And I'm not prejudging the case of the law, but I'm making a different point, namely that there is really growing political embarrassment. And it would be much better for the president to have a new team installed. And I'm not going to talk about individuals because that implies culpability for the individuals. But a new team would generate a sense of new direction. That's what's needed.
Let me turn to another direction, Dr. Brzezinski. There is a sort of a presumption in the way the administration is going about it that a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, Oliver North, somehow did all this on his own, that he is fired, that he is locked out of his office. Does it make any sense to you that you think it is remotely possible that Ollie North did all this on his own without the knowledge of his superiors?
Bob, I think that scapegoating is not in the American tradition.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
I don't think it's compatible with the code of chivalry, which I think motivates Ronald Reagan, and therefore I find this very distasteful. Moreover, it boggles my mind when I hear suggestions that an operation of this complexity, involving a number of people, involving foreign governments, involving a hostile government, Iran, involving a friendly government, Israel, could have been mounted and conducted by a lieutenant colonel all by himself. I think I've met him. And I'm sure that he's a patriotic American who has been doing what he ought to be doing. I was asked for a comment about him a few days ago, and I said he should have been promoted to brigadier general because the bureaucracy is full of middle-level officials who get paid for doing nothing. You get a guy who gets things done when he's told to do something, and you better keep him and promote him. It's the policy that was wrong, and therefore it's the policymakers that ought to be punished, not a patriotic executioner of policy.
What was wrong about the policy?
The policy was misguided.
You mean the giving of the selling of the arms to Iran in itself, or the siphoning back of the aid to the Contras?
I have no objection to the United States seeking to establish some links with Iran, but linking that very delicate and difficult process to arms sales was destructive. Undertaking it through some various rather spooky middlemen was dangerous. Getting involved with a third government which has its own strategic agenda in the Middle East, namely Israel, could have been counterproductive to our regional interests, as it has proven to be. And all of that, I think, was counterproductive. Last but not least, I think the United States very probably fell victim here to an international scam.
Tell me, what is that? What international scam? That's interesting. What?
An international scam in the sense that when you have that much money laundered by so many different levels, all sorts of uncontrollable arms dealers who are not susceptible to American discipline, private individuals or consultants stepping into the picture out of nowhere, disappearing into nowhere. I think the chances for this being a scam are very high.
Who was skimming the money? Who do you think was skimming the money?
Well, that remains to be established.
Do you think somebody in our government was skimming the money?
No, I don't think anybody in the U.S. government did it. But I think that there is a possibility that this whole thing is much more complex than so far.
Is Israel culpable in this?
I am not going to suggest who is culpable until we find out. But the possibility with that many different layers of participants of some things getting lost in the shuffle, including a lot of dollars, is very high.
You think it's conceivable the Contras never got the money, never got the arms?
It's conceivable they didn't get all of it.
They say they didn't get all of it, and very little of it, in fact. Now,
We'll know, but that is exactly what the international scam comes
Shamir and Perez and Rabin all say they met, and they all said that the Israel shipped arms only at the request of the United States. Now, at the request of the United States, would that be one lieutenant colonel? And can you imagine those fellows meeting later with Schultz or Reagan and not saying anything about it?
Well, Tom, I don't know really much more than you know, and I have read the press, and you have read the press. The press suggests that there were contacts between Bud McFarlane and Kimchi of the Israeli Foreign Ministry, and it isn't clear to me who initiated these contacts, but the press seems to suggest that Kimchi did. There were some contacts with the various arms merchants, some Iranian, some Israeli, some Saudi, some American, I gather, some American consultants. Now, all of that, I think, is sort of interwoven, and I'm not quite sure who started this game. And many people participated, some clearly acting on behalf of governments, some clearly acting as private intermediaries or perhaps private businessmen.
Well, isn't that the
Tom,
fault
we
of the
gotta take
National
a break.
Security Council that they dealt with these private agents?
I find it very hard to believe that the middle-ranking official of the NSC could do this on his own.
Okay, we got to take a break now. And when we come back with Dr. Brzezinski, we'll ask him whether all this is the cause of the Democrats putting such restrictions on the president in the conduct of foreign policy in the United States.
Sports Illustrated wanted me to talk to you sports fans out there, and also to you people who love them. Christmas is coming, and if there's someone on your list who's interested in sports, give them Sports Illustrated. It's America's #1 sports magazine. You fans know I'm big on sports. On the other hand, I'm also sensitive, warm, caring, kind of a teddy bear with muscles. So you folks can trust me to help you find a great gift. You fans are going to love the week after week of action-packed coverage. And you'll love it because now Sports Illustrated is over 60% off the cover price. 54 big issues starting with a double blockbuster, the eagerly awaited Sportsman of the Year. Then you'll charge down the field for the bowl games, the NFL playoffs, and Super Bowl 21. But you don't have to go anywhere. Just call and order Sports Illustrated. No crowds, no returns. Nobody brings you basketball like this. The picks, the predictions, the pounding action under the hoop. And look at these guys. The body blows, the body checks, even a little body English. Then you'll swing into the summer game. These guys play baseball like I play football. Football! That's right. Before you know it, it's time for another season of the leading rushers, the bone crushers. Hey, you'll get all your favorite sports. And you'll get an attractive card that you could sign and give to your fan. So order now and save over 60% off a full year of Sports Illustrated. Call 1-800-621-4900. Then we'll include the baseball, football, and basketball previews plus the swimsuit issue, all for 3 payments of $14.98. And you won't be billed until next year. So call 1-800-621-4900. Make it a Merry Christmas all around. You sports fans will be happy. You people who love them will be happy. I feel kind of like Santa Claus. Another sensitive big guy.
Now, back to Crossfire on Cable News Network.
Welcome back to Crossfire. Once again, the Ayatollah Khomeini has paralyzed an American president and an American administration. And we're discussing that with a former National Security Advisor, Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who had a lot to do with the paralysis imposed from the Ayatollah Khomeini. Dr. Brzezinski.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Dr. Brzezinski, isn't this really not only the cause of the Ayatollah, but of your friends, your fellow Democrats in Congress, who have put such restrictions on the conduct of foreign policy, who took 2 years to pass that $100 million, which they finally passed for the freedom fighters in Nicaragua, that it invited the kind of maneuvers that have gotten this administration in trouble?
I think there's some truth to what you're saying. That, of course, in turn was rooted in the very tragic years of the Vietnamese War, Watergate, and all of that, which has contributed to the weakening of the executive role or prerogatives in the area of foreign policy. I think it would be terribly damaging to the United States if, as a further consequence of this affair, the balance between the executive branch and the legislative branch was further tipped to the disadvantage of the executive branch.
But isn't that exactly what
I think there's a
people
real
are talking
danger
about on the Hill?
There's a real danger of that.
Dr. Brzezinski, after all, we have a representative government, and Congress represents the people, just as the administration does.
Tom, we also have...
What is wrong with the Congress exercising the checks and balances that the Constitution prescribes?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but I was just about to say that we not only have a representative government, we have a constitutional government. And the Constitution clearly prescribes that the president is responsible for the management of foreign affairs.
All right, let me go through the foreign policy of the United States right now, just for a second. We have a failure in the Middle East. We have a failure. We had a failure in Lebanon. We have a failure in South Africa. In Central America, we're reduced now to either a failure or war. It seems to me that the United States foreign policy has never been at a lower ebb, not since at any rate since Vietnam.
You know, there's an answer to that. There's a presidential election every 4 years, Tom. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Well, I'll let you guys fight about this if you like.
Well, what do you say? I mean, it is not, the foreign policy of the United States is right now in a chaotic state. I don't think you can blame that on the Democrats.
Yes, you sure can, part of it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's all right, have fun.
I mean, did we send the Marines to Lebanon?
Go ahead.
Tom, I don't think the situation is going to be made any better by 535 would-be secretaries of state trying to steer our foreign policy. The point is that if we want to have an effective foreign policy, we have to have an effective policy-making process in the executive branch. And one of the problems over the last several years, in my judgment, has been the weakness of that policy-making process. And here we come back to the issue we've been discussing, because it's been said in the last few weeks that part of the problem is that the NSC has been too active. In my judgment, the National Security Council has not been too strong, it's been too weak for the last several years. And as a consequence, the president hasn't had someone close to him who really is on top of things, who can advise him, who has a standing, who has a standing also to say to the president, which is terribly important and has been overlooked, to say to the president, this is wrong, don't do it, you're making a mistake. Someone who has self-confidence.
Now, someone who has been mentioned for that job is the Secretary of the Navy, John Lehman. And Tom thinks that's a terrible idea because Secretary Lehman has ideas and he has some ideology. Do you think he would be a good kind of a person for that job or a bad person?
I think he would be a good kind of a person. I think the person that the president is going to announce is going to be David Absher.
I do too.
He'll be very good for that job.
You think he will be good? You think he's strong enough?
Let me get myself straight on Lehman. I never objected to Lehman because he was, for the reasons Bob mentioned, I objected to him because it seems to me he is an activist. And I think the last few weeks have shown that what you want in the National Security Council is perhaps the advice that you're suggesting, but you don't want them to run an operation that Congress, the President, and the American people are disgraced by.
Yeah, I don't think the NSC should be running operations, but I think the NSC should be coordinating the activities of the key departments that are involved in foreign affairs. The NSC should be developing options for presidential decision.
That's what it was for.
The NSC should try to develop a broad presidential strategy, and the NSC advisor should also have the guts and the standing to tell the president that he's wrong and to say it to his face.
Wait a minute, the person you mentioned may not be a household word. He's David Absher. He's been around a long time, most recently ambassador to NATO. Do you really think he's the guy who's going to stand up to the President of the United States and some tough chief of staff and say you're wrong?
He better.
Do you think he will?
I think there's a chance he will, especially if he's given a chance to do so. That is to say, if he's given a direct relationship with the president. One of the problems for the last several years has been that the job of the NSC advisor has been downgraded.
That's right.
He, many times, really didn't have even direct access to the president, had to go through the domestic chief of staff.
All right, now I want to mention somebody else that we haven't mentioned.
Secretary of State doing that job.
All right, so I want to mention about that.
You can't run U.S. foreign policy in its totality, that is to say national security policy, from the Department of State, because today foreign policy means diplomacy, it also means defense, also means intelligence, also means strategy. And the State Department is not capable of handling all of these aspects. It's capable of handling one aspect only, namely diplomacy. And this is why the State Department is an important component of the foreign policy making process, but it really can't be the dominant one.
Dr. Brzezinski, one of the most remarkable things in this whole remarkable week has been that George Shultz disagreed publicly with the president as a Secretary of State under your president, President Carter. Cyrus Vance did on the rescue mission to Iran. Cyrus Vance resigned, Shultz didn't, and Shultz looks like he is emerging out of this as the strongest person, says he's going to serve out the last 2 years. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's very important the Secretary of State fully and totally support the president. If he disagrees with him, he ought to resign.
Do you think Shultz should have resigned?
I don't know how deep that disagreement was. You know, McFarlane claims that he informed Shultz about the details of the operation.
Repeatedly, he says.
That's what he says. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, and I have therefore no way of making a judgment here. But it seems to me that it's very important that everyone concerned understand that the foreign policy of the United States is made by the president and the Secretary of State is his principal advisor, but also executor of the President's will.
You mentioned Colonel McFarland, and that's one of the strange things of this whole business. What is a resigned National Security Advisor doing smack in the middle of this? Do you understand that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, we have in this whole Iranian arms deal, a principal player was Robert McFarland, Bud McFarland, who had resigned as National Security Advisor off the government payroll, and he is operating, making trips to Tehran. Do you understand that?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. You know, obviously, under those circumstances, if you wanted to send a mission to Tehran, probably someone already directly working at the moment for the president, close to him, shouldn't go. Someone who was involved in the early stages of this venture, but a private citizen, could be a presidential emissary, provided there had been something to negotiate with, provided there were real expectations of a serious deal. I have some reservations about the mission, but I see nothing wrong with Bud having been asked to conduct negotiations.
Do you buy the administration theory that there are moderates in Iran that they could make a deal with?
There probably are some moderates there, but I don't think they locate
They're in
them.
hiding.
I don't think they were dealing with them. I read, for example, that some of the arms went to the Guard, to the Popular Guard, whatever it's called, not even to the army. Well, that's hardly the moderate element among those who carry arms in Iran.
Well, I was told that they even consider Speaker Rafsanjani a moderate. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard.
Yeah, it's all relative. I suppose Hermann
Let me
Goering
get back for just
was
a
a moderate
second.
compared to
Let
Himmler.
me get back for just a second to the operations which the NSC conducted and which you don't think they should conduct. But we have General Secord, General Singlaub, a host of others, including some arms dealers that you mentioned, all mixed up in this and possibly in the skimming, possibly.
Oh,
I'd say.
come on, Tom,
Possibly.
you can't say...
Well, we don't
How
know.
can
The
you
money
say
is
that?
gone.
Well, I would sue you so fast if I were them.
What?
How can you
They
say
probably
that?
would
How
sue
can you
me.
say that on
But-
the air?
But
That's incredible.
what happens when the NSC, if the NSC is to conduct operations, shouldn't it conduct them through people who are in office and can be held responsible?
Well, again, you know, it's not something to which you can give a categorical yes or no answer. There are circumstances in which the use of private citizens, carefully controlled, carefully screened, subject to effective cross-checks, is justified. So I wouldn't categorically say no. In this particular instance, one, I think, is justified in entertaining the suspicion that perhaps not enough precautions were taken.
All right, will the president survive this? Will?
Oh, yes,
There's
definitely.
not going to be an impeachment, not going to be a
No.
resignation?
No,
I agree with you.
I'm absolutely confident of that.
All right. Zbigniew Brzezinski, we thank you for being our guest on Crossfire tonight. Bob and I will be back in just a minute.
Take the whole good Sports Illustrated wanted me to talk to you sports fans out there, and also to you people who love them. Christmas is coming, and if there's someone on your list who's interested in sports, give them Sports Illustrated. It's America's #1 sports magazine. You fans know I'm big on sports. On the other hand, I'm also sensitive, warm, caring, kind of a teddy bear with muscles. So you folks can trust me to help you find a great gift. You fans are gonna love the week after week of action-packed coverage. And you'll love it because now Sports Illustrated is over 60% off the cover price. 54 big issues starting with a double blockbuster. The eagerly awaited Sportsman of the Year. Then you'll charge down the field for the bowl games, the NFL playoffs, and Super Bowl 21. But you don't have to go anywhere. Just call and order Sports Illustrated. No crowds, no returns. Nobody brings you basketball like this. The picks, the predictions, the pounding action under the hoop. Look at these guys. The body blows, the body checks, even a little body English. Then you'll swing into the summer game. These guys play baseball like I played football. Football! That's right. Before you know it, it's time for another season of the leading rushers, the bone crushers. Hey, you'll get all your favorite sports. And you'll get an attractive card that you could sign and give to your fan. So order now and save over 60% off a full year of Sports Illustrated. Call 1-800-621-4900. Then we'll include the baseball, football, and basketball previews plus the swimsuit issue, all for 3 payments of $14.98. And you won't be billed until next year. So call 1-800-621-4900. Make it a Merry Christmas all around. You sports fans will be happy. You people who love them will be happy. I feel kind of like Santa Claus. Another sensitive big guy.
Now, back to Crossfire on Cable News Network.
Mr. Novak, I'd say that no matter where the cutoff is, John Regan or Colonel North, the United States to the rest of the world we look like fools as well as liars. What do you say?
I think we look like fools, certainly, which is the worst thing to look like. But I wanted, Tom, this is going to go on regrettably for a while, and I would like to get from you a commitment that in the interest of decency, that you do not accuse people on the basis of no knowledge of skimming, of theft, and of law-breaking. Can we get that commitment from you right tonight?
No, sir. Wait till it comes out, Bob. There's been a lot of skimming of money along the way. From the left,
but you associated with people, and that's disgraceful.
Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Robert Novak. Join us again next time for another edition of Crossfire.
Headlines at 26 minutes after the hour. Two new reports today say the United States sold Iran more weapons than President Reagan has stated. Citing sources in Iran, Associated Press and the London Times say former National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane brought up to 20 plane loads of arms to Iran last May. This morning's New York Times reports that 17 people scheduled to go on trial for smuggling arms to Iran were rounded up in a sting operation set up by the U.S. government. But it appears those government officials who set up the sting were not aware that the administration was secretly shipping arms to Iran at the time. And scientists say the A-Taiwan flu virus has resurfaced in this country after 35 years, and they warn there may be a potential shortage of vaccine to prevent the virus. The so-called young people's flu first appeared in Asia last spring and has spread into the United States. Those are some of the headlines. We'll be back with more news at the top of the hour on Daybreak Saturday. Now stay tuned for Showbiz Today.
It's working. As an American, you can be proud of the international service agencies and their efforts to help the world's poor help themselves. ISA agency programs develop self-reliance and instill a sense of pride for millions through medical care and training, construction projects, water and irrigation systems, job training, and agricultural assistance. It's working, but it's only a beginning. Through the international service agencies, you are making a world of difference.
Hi, I'm Dick Clark. Drug and alcohol